Have you guys ever wondered just how popular Rise of Kingdoms still is, even though it's almost 7 years old? Well, today we're going to take a look at estimates for monthly downloads, monthly revenue. We're going to see how it's trending compared to other games in its genre, so that way we can see if Rise of Kingdoms is still popular, because as you guys know, they recently updated 3 skills on 3 older commanders to give them what is called an internal reform skill, as you can see here on Minamoto. And so with so much emphasis being put on the early game in Rise of Kingdoms, I was curious just how well the game is still doing. But first, what's going on, guys? If you guys appreciate these videos where we do a deep dive to figure out the current state of Rise of Kingdoms, drop a thumbs up down below, really helps out the channel. And as you guys might have seen, I know other content creators have covered this, but there's a new vengeance game mode here in some of the newer servers in the game. This is not present in all servers, but this is called Path of Vengeance, and as you can see here, it gives you AFK rewards in the form of tombs of knowledge, some sculptures here, some resources even, which is pretty nice. And one quick look at this game mode makes it look pretty familiar. If you've played other games in the city builder genre, then you've probably seen this exact type of game mode before. In fact, I recently made a video here on the channel where I tried a game called King Shot for the very first time, and this game mode is basically the same, right? And then, spoiler alert, King Shot got it from a game called Whiteout Survival, and I'm certain that that was not the first game to have this mini game either. So Path of Vengeance is pretty cool. It's a really nice way of giving new players some AFK rewards, and I always felt like, especially with things like experience tombs, right, like a lot of people just grinding up all your commanders to level 60 in the early game can take a really long time. You have to make sure you log in for guardians at reset, and so this sort of AFK mode is a nice fun little game mode to progress faster in the early game, but also it comes with a few changes, as we talked about before. As you level up a commander, you can see that they gain attack, defense, and health in the vengeance game mode, so they actually get stronger as you add more sculptures. And as you can see here, my active skill in Minamoto is only level 2, but it still only takes 2 sculptures to upgrade the skill, and that's because the skill has to be upgraded 5 times, I believe, in order to get the next upgrade. But you get these small little rewards, sort of stepstones along the way. And as you can see, of course, the second skill on Minamoto actually now has a building time reduction. It is a 60-minute build time reduction, which, in case you guys were wondering, for a level 1 farm, let's take a look. I go to upgrade and it says instead of costing 5 seconds, it is 0 seconds. It's an instant upgrade. I don't have to wait at all. If I go to level up this hospital, instant upgrade. If I go to level up this castle, it is an instant upgrade. So anything for me that is under 10 minutes is going to be an instant upgrade. I don't need to wait for like helps or anything like that. It's just going to go. And as you can see, of course, you can upgrade this to level 5, so you're going to get up to an hour of building speed ups for free every single time that you speed something up. So for example, this level 7 farm, if I upgrade this, instead of it being 57 minutes, it is 47 minutes. So it's pretty straightforward. But if we take a look here at the internal reform event, you can see that Minamoto, of course, has the building construction. We also have Cao Cao, who gives you 100 free action points every day. Now, I don't have this skill unlocked, but I assume that it would show up in a similar fashion as like your free action points that you get every day. Maybe it will show up as like a little Cao Cao icon here or something. I'm not really sure exactly. Or maybe when you go to attack something with Cao Cao, the first like 100 action points spent are free. I have no idea. And then beyond that, Hannibal Barca actually gives you 50 free tier 4 units of all types. So I assume that that means that you get 200 free tier 4 units every single day. So 50 cabs, 50 archers, 50 infantry, 50 siege. I don't know if that one really moves the needle, which is kind of funny considering just how bad the Barca already is. But all in all, I think these are great improvements. I think that they should expand this beyond legendary commanders, put this on your epic commanders, put this on other commanders to make them useful, right? Maybe put these gathering speed bonuses on these commanders and make them like account wide or something. I have no idea, but the point is I like this system. But what does this actually mean for the early game, right? Like, why is Rise of Kingdoms doing this? The game is already like almost 7 years old, and so to have all of these sudden changes to the early game, of course, if you guys remember a few months ago, they were also adding a second research queue, which at this point I don't know if that's still a thing. You guys can let me know in the comment section below. They were also talking about adding a third building queue. Both of these would be locked behind bundles bundle purchases. So there's been a lot of things that they've been optimizing for the early game in Rise of Kingdoms. This is just the latest in that string of changes, and so that got me to questioning, like, maybe Rise of Kingdoms is really trying to lure in more players, right? And why might they be doing that? Well, if you've been playing since day one, and I've been here since about a month after global launch, it's a long time to be playing the same game. And I know that a lot of people over the years, I've known players that have come and gone, right? And so maybe Rise of Kingdoms has evaluated their early game and said, hey, we need to spice up the early game and make it a little bit more appealing to new players. So the first thing that I was curious about was, if we go on the Android App Store, where does Rise of Kingdoms rank on the top free strategy charts? Okay, this was screenshot I think 2 days ago or something over on my Android device. As you can see here, we have King Shot at number 1, which again, I just made a video about that, which is the whole point, reason why I made that video is because I saw it was number 1. If you're curious about that game, check out that video. I did a whole like hour first impressions, and it was not sponsored, so I really did give you guys my real first impressions there, some good, some bad. Definitely check it out. Then we have Lords Mobile at number 2, which is an older game than Rise of Kingdoms. Then we have Whiteout Survival, Last War Survival Game, we have Clash Royale. Some of these games might look super familiar, like Clash of Clans, but Rise of Kingdoms came in at 54 on the strategy chart here. Age of Empires Mobile coming in at 43, obviously a much newer game as well. We even see games like Age of Apes coming in at number 26, which is crazy because I was actually sponsored to play Age of Apes back when it first came out in like 2021 or 2022. I actually, it's crazy that the game is still around. Then I was curious to see, okay, well, where does it rank on the top grossing charts for strategy, right? Not just where it ranks for like downloads as a free game, but how much money is it making in the strategy category. And as we can see here, Last War Survival Game comes in at number 1, Whiteout Survival at number 2, King Shot is number 6 here, and you can see that we have Clash of Clans at 11 and Rise of Kingdoms at 14. So Rise of Kingdoms in the top 15 highest grossing strategy games on the entire App Store, which is insane. And if we switch to top grossing for all categories across all genres of game, you'll see that Rise of Kingdoms is still in the top 100 at number 57, which is kind of wild. It's just shy of Call of Duty Mobile, Wuthering Waves, and it's actually ahead of games like Marvel Strike Force and even Pokemon TCG Pocket, which I feel like has been a big game lately, and we are still outperforming overall. So all in all, in the strategy category, Rise of Kingdoms is a little bit down the list, still in the top 100, but in terms of top grossing, Rise of Kingdoms is making a ridiculous amount of money, and I think that that is obviously a good sign, right? There's no such thing as a dead game that makes millions of dollars a month, okay? And so then I was wondering, like, okay, well, to be that high up on the top grossing list, it must be making a lot of money, right? And so that's when I went over to a website called Sensor Tower, which is well known over the last couple of years for compiling data such as what we're looking at here, and is relevant to the topic of this video. So here we can see Rise of Kingdoms on the Google App Store. Okay, you can see that last month it got about 300,000 downloads with 4 million revenue worldwide. If we move over to the Apple App Store, which you can see right here, it has about 500,000 downloads last month and 6 million in revenue worldwide as well. For Apple, it shows that it's number 28 in the role-playing game downloads, and for the Google App Store it is number 36 for the game strategy. So I guess actually since I took those screenshots, the game has moved up a little bit in that ranking, which is cool. So all in all, across both of these platforms, we have $10 million in revenue every single month, right? 6 plus 4 right here, and we have about 800,000 downloads every single month from those platforms. And what I want you guys to remember is that this does not include PC downloads. It also doesn't include Flux scripts, right? So if you're making purchases on Lilith's own website, okay, in case you guys didn't know, that is store.lilith.com/ROK, you can get Flux scripts here, and it's actually ends up being, it might be about the same price, but you get bundles and Flux coins which can be redeemed for bundles as well. So it's much better to spend on here. And I would argue that if you're a big spender in Rise of Kingdoms, you're probably playing on PC and spending on the Lilith's official website, right? Like that's just how it is. So all the revenue made here is not counted at all. This also does not include the Chinese servers for Rise of Kingdoms, right? If you guys didn't know, Rise of Kingdoms is a game that is originally from China, and they have their own servers in mainland China, which you don't interact with typically if you're on the global servers like you and I are. So we have no idea what the downloads and the revenue is for those servers. And finally, there's also the Huawei app gallery. If you own a Huawei device, or for whatever reason, if you use the Huawei app gallery and you spend money there for whatever their incentive might be, then you actually, that money that's made on that app store is not counted here. I don't know how popular that is, but I just wanted to make that point known. So then I thought, okay, well, how does this rank against the other games that Lilith has released lately? And as you can see here on the Apple App Store, Rise of Kingdoms is the game with the most downloads out of any Lilith title here, and it's pretty far ahead of second place, which is Warpath Ace Shooter. Taking a look at the Android page, the exact same thing is pretty clear here. It actually shows 400,000 downloads in the last 30 days, which is a little higher than we just saw on the other page right here, 300k. So I'm not sure which one to believe. It's probably like a rounding thing on how it actually displays here, but the point is that, okay, so for Lilith games, Rise of Kingdoms is clearly the highest downloaded and is definitely the most profitable by a pretty decent margin. Let's take a look at Farlight, right? Because you guys remember back when Call of Dragons came out, that was developed by a sister studio to Rise of Kingdoms called Farlight Games, or maybe that's just the publisher. I actually don't know exactly, but the point is, if we take a look here, the #1 game for Farlight Games on the Apple App Store is AFK Journey with 100,000 downloads last month and 3 million in revenue. So honestly, super respectable revenue given the amount of downloads here. And you can see that Call of Dragons comes in second place with 70k downloads in the last 30 days. So definitely Rise of Kingdoms is still far more popular than Call of Dragons. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the video, but I also wanted to know what about the Android data for Farlight. And you can see here that on Android, it's actually interesting. The Call of Dragons is way more popular on Android than it is on iOS. Not sure what the reason is there. Maybe it's emulators on PC or something like that. I'm not really sure, but you can see here that Farlight 84 is actually in second place with basically zero revenue. And then we have third place AFK Journey with, again, tons of revenue for the number of downloads, which is really, really nice. So, okay, no matter how you cut it, right? No matter whether you're comparing Rise of Kingdoms to other Lilith titles, or if you compare it to AFK Journey or Call of Dragons, Rise of Kingdoms is still, from what I can see here, the most popular and most revenue generating game that Lilith or its sister studios have produced, which is kind of insane. But then I thought, okay, let's take a look at some Google Trends data, right? Because I feel like Google Trends is actually a really good way to detect how popular something is, because if a game is popular, then people are going to be looking it up on Google, right? They're going to be looking it up either on search or on YouTube. And so I feel like Google Trends is a great thing to look at if you're trying to gauge how popular a game might be. And so here we can see worldwide for the last 12 months, we have Rise of Kingdoms in blue, okay? And that's going to be this sort of middle line right here, and we're comparing it to other games that we saw on those screenshots from the Android App Store. So we have in red Lords Mobile, in yellow Age of Empires Mobile, we have in green Whiteout Survival, and in purple we have Last War Survival Game. So as you can see here, Rise of Kingdoms is actually kind of right in the middle of the pack here, which is kind of interesting because Whiteout Survival and Last War Survival Game are newer games, right? Now you can actually see right back at the beginning or at the end of May 2024, you could see they were all pretty close together, right? They were all pretty close. And then as the year kind of went on, Whiteout Survival and Last War Survival Game started to pull ahead of Rise of Kingdoms in popularity. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be that they're spending more money on marketing. It could be that the game is more appealing to certain demographics. It could be that the game is more casual friendly, so more people get involved with the game and stick around. There's plenty of different reasons why that might be the case, but the numbers are the numbers. Those two games are consistently more popular than Rise of Kingdoms in the last 12 months. And as you saw from those screenshots, they're making more money and they're getting more downloads as of late as well in the last 30 days. If we take a look, Lords Mobile has some popular moments where it rivals Rise of Kingdoms. Right now might be one of them because this is a little bit delayed, and as you know from those screenshots before that, it was #2 on the Google App Store. And then we have Age of Empires Mobile had a big jump in popularity right around launch, and then it's pretty much fizzled out since then. So if we come in here and we remove, like, let's remove Lord Mobile and let's take a look at Call of Dragons, right? Because that's another game that's in the genre. In Call of Dragons, still the red line here is even more flat. It's basically about as popular as Age of Empires Mobile. Let's move over to YouTube search. I'm curious how videos do, and here you can see that Rise of Kingdoms is way more popular on YouTube than any any of these other competitors. Interesting to note that it looks like, again, Call of Dragons and Age of Empires Mobile are pretty close in the YouTube algorithm, depending, you know, it might be the case that there are more Call of Dragons creators than Age of Empires Mobile creators, so you actually might get more views on Age of Empires Mobile videos because the game is newer and it's got a similar amount of search traffic but fewer people making content for it. Or it could be the other way around. Age of Empires is a really popular franchise, maybe they have more content creators to compete with as well. If we remove Call of Dragons, let's take a look at Lords Mobile again just to see what the YouTube looks like here, and we will see that Lords Mobile actually is pretty good. It's actually right in the middle there in terms of YouTube content. So as you can see, Rise of Kingdoms, even though it's not searched that much on as like a web search, it is actually still very popular on YouTube, which means it does have a very engaged player base that is looking for video content and wants to watch, listen, or see live streams for Rise of Kingdoms. So if you guys are tuning into this video, then maybe you're one of them, and I appreciate you for watching the channel. Okay, so after looking at all of that, what can we actually learn? Well, as I said before, the game is making an insane amount of money. Okay, it is making a ridiculous amount of money, and so by that metric alone, I would say that Rise of Kingdoms is nowhere near dying, because you just, a game that makes 10 million a month, from what we can see, it's obviously more than that ain't going anywhere. Okay, at the end of the day, Lilith is a business, and they're just not going to let that product not continue to make money, right? So they're going to do what they have to do to make sure the game continues to stay relevant and popular. However, the other thing that we can learn, and this is really apparent if you're looking at the Google Trends data or the top of the Android downloads lists for strategy or whatever the case might be, Rise of Kingdoms is kind of getting beaten out by games such as Last War or Whiteout Survival or Kingshot, which is the newest one here on the scene. And I think that is what has Rise of Kingdoms a little bit focused on their early game, right? They're really starting to figure out, how can we get these new players to engage sooner? How can we get them to enjoy the game sooner, stick around, log in tomorrow, come back the next day, and finally make it to Season of Conquest, right? And there's a few reasons why these other games are doing really, really well right now compared to Rise of Kingdoms. Okay, first of all, they're newer, and so that's just, it is what it is. And to that end, I actually do have a suggestion for Rise of Kingdoms, and I do think that it would make sense if Rise of Kingdoms sort of released a rebrand of the game. And what I mean by that is just keep it the same, like it's still Rise of Kingdoms, right? But objectively, the game looks and feels different than it ever has before. I mean, we have a fresh coat of paint on the map, on the commanders, on a lot of different things. And so if you played the game 4 years ago and you came back today, it would be very different. And I think with the sort of soft launch of these new graphics, they should soft launch Rise of Kingdoms with a new branding. They should call it something like Rise of Kingdoms Last War or something like that, right? Obviously the marketing department can come up with something a lot better, but the reason for that, and I'm going to show you guys a screenshot from my own channel here, is that if you are on YouTube and you see Rise of Kingdoms down here, it actually shows you the year that the game came out, 2018, right? And to some new players, when they see that, or if they just Google it themselves, they will see the release date for the game. And I think that if a potential new player discovers that they're entering a game 7 years in or 6 years in, it's going to be a psychological, like they're going to feel like they're behind, right? And to an extent they might be, right? But in KVK 1 and in KVK 2, that doesn't really matter, right? It only starts to matter in Season of Conquest, and they've already tried to make some changes to make that more relevant, like with the commander swap thing and things like that. So psychologically, players might kind of get this, it's overwhelming to start as a new player when you're 6 years in, or you think you're 6 years in, right? And so if they sort of rebranded Rise of Kingdom and said, hey, like it's the same game you know and love, but now with a fresh coat of paint, and it's called Rise of Kingdoms Last War, and then you see when you Google Rise of Kingdoms Last War release date, it comes up as 2025, and then you look, you know, at the bottom of my YouTube video, it says Rise of Kingdoms Last War, and it says it came out in 2025. And so the game, from an outsider looking in, looks newer, right? And that's because a lot of it is newer, and they're adding these new features that we just talked about, right? And that kind of, like, in a way, the game is a different game than when you first started playing. I'm sure anybody who remembers when this was Rise of Civilizations, the game is way different than it was back then. Back then we didn't even have the equipment system, just like you see right here. We didn't have the formation system, we didn't have crystal tech, we didn't even have KVK when the game first came out. Okay, so objectively the game is different now, and so they should reflect that update the sort of release date of the game from a version standpoint, right? Like what was the latest version? I think it was like 1.0.94 or something like that. Why not just at some point just release version 2.0.0, right? And it's just 2.0, and it's like, okay, here's the fresh game with the fresh release year, and then everything looks new, fresh. It's a new game, quote unquote, but not actually a new game. All of us watching will continue to keep our progress. That's just my quick tip there to make the game appear newer and more appealing to new players. Another reason why some of these other games might be performing really well right now is, first of all, just crazy marketing campaigns, but also they might be a little bit more casual friendly, right? If we're talking about games like Whiteout Survival, we're talking about games like King Shot, we're talking about games like Last War, they have these super marketable mini games that are very casual friendly. And also those games are played in portrait mode instead of landscape mode, which makes it easier to play with one hand, so you can play on the go while you're on the bus, or you're walking somewhere. You can quickly log in and play without having to walk around like this, and then you're not really paying attention, right? You can use one hand, and the other hand could be carrying your backpack, or it could be doing something else. And so because these games are a little bit more casual friendly, at least from the outside, and perhaps from an artistical perspective, right? If you watched my video playing King Shot the other day, you'll know that those graphics are a little bit more kid friendly, right? They might appeal to a younger demographic, and kids have a lot more free time on their hands than you or I if we're in our 30s, right? Or if you're in college, you have less time, right? Maybe not so much college, but like if you have a wife and kids and a family, and like it's harder to like really dedicate to these games. And so games that appeal to kids are inherently going to be more popular because there's just more kids playing video games, right? And that's not to say adults don't play, but I think you can understand that like the game that appeals to the 12 to 35 demographic is going to be more popular than a game that appeals to the 18 to 35 demographic, right? There's like a whole bunch of years in there that you're missing, and those are the kids that have nothing to do, and so like that's going to be more popular. And the other thing that I mentioned before, and this was very brief, but I do want to touch on it once again, is mini games. Okay, and this is feedback that I have given Rise of Kingdoms in the wishlist series. I've made wishlist videos in the past. I think usually it's at the end of each year I give a wish list for what I want in the next coming year, and kind of looking back at the year prior. But my point is that I don't know if it was the most recent one or the one before that, but I remember the year that they announced fishing was coming to the game, right? And I was really looking forward to a fishing mini game, because I was like, oh, like finally something completely different, right? Like a fishing mini game, there's no way that you could make that a combat oriented mini game, right? Like it's fishing. How could it be PvP or PvE or anything? It's just fishing, right? It's going to be some chill random mini game, and maybe we'll get rewards, right? And as it turns out, the fishing mini game in Rise of Kingdoms is really not that special, really. I mean, for being honest, like it's almost like the Wheel of Fortune. Like you're just pulling a random reward out of a loot table, right? I mean, that's kind of all it is, right? Now there's the nuance of like picking the different like pond that you're fishing in or whatever. You could fish with other people technically, I guess, even though you don't really see them. But point is, the mini game did not live up to my expectations, right? And in my wish list video, I said I was dying for a chill fishing mini game, and we didn't really get it, in my opinion. So the reason that I'm telling you this story is because in King Shot, the game that I just posted a video about, there was a fishing mini game. It was a fishing tournament, right? And it was very reminiscent, and I wish I had footage, but the event is over now. It was very reminiscent of an early 2000s Flash game, where you actually throw your line into the water, and you have to like just dodge the different fish on your way down, so you could get all the way to the bottom of the ocean, and then you try to snag as many high value fish as you can as you're reeling the line in. And obviously you accumulate points, and there's a leaderboard to see how many people have gotten how many points, and there's also rewards that you unlock when you hit certain thresholds. And I think there's actually a battle pass as well, where you can unlock the battle pass. I think it's like $5, and you can get even more rewards, and those rewards would be things akin to like legendary commander sculptures in Rise of Kingdoms, right? It would be like that caliber of reward. And I thought that was super cool, and that is precisely the type of mini game that I was looking for. And here we are a year and a half later, after I requested it basically, or wished for it, and another game kind of swooped in and did exactly what I was hoping for. And that's just one example, but I'm sure you've seen the ads of Last War, right, where you've got you control the one soldier, right? You control the one soldier, and he either goes in the +3 side, which is blue, or the -2 side, which is red, right? I'm sure you guys have seen these. We're talking about this, right? You've seen these ads. I know you have, because you're on the internet and everyone's seen these ads, right? And you might even find them annoying, but the point is in Last War there's actually a mini game where you actually play this, and it's pretty much completely separate from like the city builder aspect. It's not related to PvP really. It's just a game mode that you can just play this if you want to, and it's just fun, right? Or if you guys remember Age of Empires Mobile, they had a literally just a clone of Vampire Survivors just built into the game. You could just play, and it was just completely separate from anything else. And the reason that I'm saying this is because every single one of these newer games has these built-in mini games that have no other function other than to simply be a little bit of fun. They're just a little bit of fun. They're just like, you just hop on, a little bit of fun, this or that. It's very casual friendly, and you still make a little bit of progress towards things like commanders, right? And that's precisely what I think, personally, in my opinion. I think that is what is missing in Rise of Kingdoms, and has been missing for many years now, because that is sort of the catalyst to get people invested, right? They come back for the mini game, but they stay for the city progress that they've been making and their alliance and the friends that they make, and they learn to love the game from there, right? And I think that Rise of Kingdoms can be more successful if they implement mini games like that, because it will attract way more players to at least download it and try it out. Now, the last thing I want to go over here is with the spenders, right? We've talked about in this video how Rise of Kingdoms is still making a ridiculous amount of money, and they're still trying to get new players to come and try out the game. But you might be wondering, like, okay, well, is the game still free to play friendly? Like, do free to play players even still play the game anymore? And the answer is yeah, they actually do. So a few weeks ago, I went ahead and I posted this poll on my community page. If you guys missed that, you're probably not subscribed. You definitely want to go ahead and do that down below. And as you can see here, the results show that out of 6.6 thousand people who voted, we had 40% said that they were completely free to play. Low spender came in at 43%. So actually the most popular answer was low spender, which means they've spent between $1 and $50 per month. Okay, then we had 14% of people said they were a mid or high spender, so dolphin or whale. This is how I kind of broke that down. Mid spenders 50 to 150 per month. If YouTube gave me 5 slots here instead of 4, I would have broke this up a little bit differently, but it is what it is. It's not perfect. But you know, 14% of people say they spend at least $50 a month or more, up to 800, and then 3% of those people said they are a Kraken, which means they spend over $800 per month. Okay, so now that we have this data, the question is, has this changed over the years, right? This is in 2025, but what about 2024, 2023, or 2022? Well, I don't have a poll from last year, but I do have a poll from Chiskel's channel. This was 2 years ago, asking about 2022. Okay, and we have 38% of people are free to play, and 27% of people are between $1 and $100. So okay, we can see here that actually the Kraken club is, you know, there's still a similar amount of Krakens. We broke this down a little bit differently, but what's interesting here is that 38% of people were free to play. I have 40% of people free to play. Okay, well, great news. Chiskel did the same thing a year prior, and we can see that they have 36% of people as free to play, 26% of people between $1 and $100. And so this is actually, you know, Chiskel actually got pretty much the exact same results year to year. And it's also worth noting that this has 13,000 votes. The 2021 poll had 17,000 votes, and that's how you know that YouTube has actually significantly reduced the exposure of these polls. It used to be the case that these went out to everybody. That is no longer the case. As you can see, mine is very, very unpopular, even though I have these cute little pictures attached to them. And if we go all the way back, we have Gecko Gaming 5 years ago asked this question: what's your spending budget in ROK? Now, he didn't have a free to play tier, but he had a sub $50 tier, and it was 59%. Okay, which I would say is honestly kind of surprising, considering for me sub $50 would have been 83%. Here it was only 59% is sub $50, right? But regardless, the question is, do free-to-play players still play Rise of Kingdoms? And the answer is actually yeah, and there's still the same ratio of free-to-play players to high spenders in Rise of Kingdoms. So if the player base as a whole has shrunk since 2021, which I imagine it has, because remember back in 2020 and 2021, like everyone was stuck inside playing phone games, right? And so like surely there's less people playing now, but the same ratio of free to play to high spenders is still present in the game today. So what we've learned today is that Rise of Kingdoms is still performing really well from a financial perspective, the game is still extremely profitable and they're making a lot of revenue off of this game. It is in the top 15 highest revenue games in terms of strategy on the App Store, and it's in the top 100 highest grossing apps at any given time, right, beating out games like Pokemon TCG, which is pretty new, and it's Pokemon. So yeah, it's kind of insane how much money Rise of Kingdoms generates while still maintaining a healthy free-to-play community in the game, which I think is very, very worth knowing, especially because I've heard, and I can't say this for sure, but I have heard that a lot of the other games that we showed in this video, like Last War, like Whiteout Survival, they actually get, believe it or not, they actually get way more pay to win as you get deeper into the game. I have not played myself for far enough to know if that's true or not, but I can easily imagine that being the case. You guys can let me know in the comment section below if that's true. If you want to be a whale in those games, there's a whale in this game. How do you think they stack up? But the shortcomings for Rise of Kingdoms are that it is a little bit of an older game, and it's not as casual friendly as some of the other competitors, and it's lacking some casual friendly things like mini games and stuff that might attract more of those newer players. So I think that's why we see, and just to loop this back to the start of the video, that's why we see game modes like Path of Vengeance showing up, and also the rework to the early game, whether that's the new builder queue, the new research queue, the new skills that have changed on commanders like Minamoto. That's why you're seeing the early game change so much. It's because Rise of Kingdoms has already kind of figured out how to make money, right? They already make a lot of money. What they need to now figure out, the next component here is, okay, how do we actually get more and more new players coming back to the game or trying out the game or whatever the case might be? And I think now they're kind of setting their sights on the early game and how can they optimize the early game, make it more fun, make it so you can progress faster, and add just new things to experience, right? So that's kind of the current state of Rise of Kingdoms right now. I would say that Rise of Kingdoms is still in a really healthy position and is in a really great spot. I think it would make a lot of sense for them to fully revamp the early game and make it as appealing as possible, and sort of use what they've learned over the last few years and also look at what's worked for other games and just literally steal that, right? Just literally take that idea, make it their own, make it better. And I think that Rise of Kingdoms will be in a great spot. But I do still think that Rise of Kingdoms needs more mini games, and also they should rebrand and just put a fresh coat of paint on it, right? I mean, even Cao Cao technically has an updated model compared to what he used to look like. I don't know if you can change it on newer servers. Oh, you actually can, right? You can see that his model's actually changed a little bit, right? So this is the model that's in the App Store icon. Change it to that. It's only slightly different, right? But change it to that, call it Rise of Kingdoms Last War, say that it came out in 2025, and make it version 2.0, and then at least the game will look newer because it definitely feels and plays newer. Anyway guys, with that being said, if you made it to the end of this video, make sure you drop a thumbs up on it. It really helps out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so other Rise of Kingdoms players might see it. And while you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video, and comment down below your thoughts on everything we talked about in this video. Are you surprised at how much money they make? Are you surprised with the changes they're making to the early game? Are you surprised with how they're performing compared to their competitors? And are you surprised to see that there are still so many free-to-play players playing Rise of Kingdoms? With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.